Well, hello my fellow YouTubers. This will be my third attempt to make a video on our tiny house project. It has been over 2 months. It has been an extremely frustrating endeavor. On the last video, I said we had the electrician or the electrical inspector coming on Monday. He refused to come because there wasn't a building permit pulled for the entire project. We got that taken care of. Or when I asked originally, I was told for what I was doing, we would not need a building permit, but of course we would need permits for the individual professionals that were going to do, or tradesmen to do their thing. So we got that sorted, and he canceled on us a couple of times for different reasons, but we finally got a party down here. Basically, a bunch of confusion. Somebody told somebody that I was doing all this work and we had no permits, and you can't see, but right here on the wall are the sheets that have the names of all the tradesmen that are working and who have pulled their own permits. So that turned into a huge boondoggle. They finally got everybody on the same page and came down, and so I ended up getting a electrical rough-in inspection, which is what we needed, but because of all the stuff involved, we ended up getting a rough-in inspection for framing and drywall, and a rough-in inspection for the HVAC. Some of that was not exactly what we needed. The HVAC guy obviously was a little confused, and when they were saying that the HVAC work was being done without a permit, because he had a permit, and then he asked them, well, why are you even looking at my stuff? I didn't call for a rough-in inspection. But all that finally got smoothed over, and all of that got approved. We failed. Well, we didn't fail, they passed us, but we got gigged for a couple of things. One of them was that the exhaust fan in the bathroom is more than 5 feet from the exterior wall, so it has to have insulated ductwork on it for that 7 feet to go from the fan to the outside wall. And we had it hooked up on an existing big vent. It had a collar and everything on it, but the inspector didn't like that. Said no, it has to have its own completely separate vent. So we fixed all of that. And there was one of the temporary lights, which I guess you can't see, it's behind me there. One of the box that's for the light that's going to go there, just got the the fixture hanging from it with wire nuts on it, so that we have light in here. That's where all of them are, because they're temporary lights. And the box didn't have the green ground screw in it, so we had to put a ground screw in there for a even though there's no ground hooked up to a temporary light. But hey, whatever it takes to make everybody happy. So we got that done. They made me take down drywall that I had put up on the ceiling, which has nothing to do with what we were doing, but so I took down all my drywall on the bedroom ceiling because they wanted to be able to look up in there. My argument was, hey, if we had done the wiring without taking the drywall down, you'd have to crawl through the attic anyways to look. And everything you need to see, you can see through the rafters that don't have drywall on them. But they made me take it all the drywall back down and a lot of my insulation back down, so that they had full access to look at everything that was done. We ended up with 4 inspectors eventually down here, and I wasn't here that day because I was in town working on something else, and not a single inspector got on a ladder and looked at anything. Quite frustrating, but we did get it all put back together, and we have made some improvements since. That whole inspector thing really took the wind out of my sails, but you know, it's all good now. So let me show you some of the progress that we've made. Well, all of this wood was really rotted down here at the bottom and needed to be replaced. So we replaced the 5 sheets of siding on the front there, the Z-channel that had been installed previously was installed backwards. I can't even figure out how they did it, but it was holding the water, so the board stayed wet. All new Z-channel, new siding, and of course 2 new windows. So things are looking better on the outside. Of course, the fascia is destroyed with rot, but everything underneath there looks good for the most part. So that's a future project when it's not raining every day. And of course, my wife said with 2 new windows there, we've got to do a little bit of decorating. So since it'll be a while before we inconvenience the framing inspector to come back down and check my work on the frame end there, it's going to be without drywall for a while. Well, we have drywall on the ceiling in all the rooms now. Pretty excited about that. I don't have this drywall on because I need to do the vent for the dryer, and also stub us a water spigot through that wall. But since I'm going to be replacing some siding on the outside, I decided to leave all of that until we have the siding done, so we can poke holes one time. Alright, our HVAC is finally complete. We have to put in, of course, all the registers and covers once everything is mud taped and painted. The only audible that the inspectors called in here, even though we have the high and the low fresh air vents, well, they've adopted a new part of the code that requires a 4-inch fresh air vent be tapped into the return air. And so you can't see it because Ben from Air Performance does amazing work. He went up in the attic, tapped it in, and ran it the full distance out the wall and put the vent on the back side of the house. So it's visually not available without me crawling in the attic, and I'm not planning on doing that today. And if by chance you wondered what that is, because we're on a concrete slab here, I had visions of grandeur of drilling a hole and trying to find a way to get that drain somewhere, and Ben from Air Performance said, all I got to do is put this little pump box on there and hook the hose up. And so he ran that up with the Freon lines and ran it all the way down and out the back, and it's hidden, and it dumps on the other side of the outside unit. And again, just a great job. I couldn't be happier with his work. Just how nice he did everything. Really a great look for something that nobody will ever see. All right, well, this is our 16-inch return air vent. The HVAC unit is on the other side of that wall. I wanted to simply just put a little hole here, throw a grill in, and do the return air there. I mean, we're talking between 500 and 600 square feet here. I didn't want to get too crazy, but the HVAC man convinced me that the noise that would make in here would be really distracting, and so we took his advice and let him do what he wanted to do, and put vents where he wanted to put them, and he really did all kinds of crazy math as to how many cubic feet per minute the fan produces, and how much each of these runs could carry. And the result is that when you set that thermostat to heat or cold, and you walk in here, it is just awesome. The temperature is consistent. Obviously it's not that big a space, but it's just nice that the temperature is consistent everywhere you go, except for the bathroom, which is a little bit warmer than everything else, which I am fine with, and is a little bit cooler when the air conditioner is running. So I'm real happy, and he says it'll perform even better once we get the grills on everything. Alright, I wanted to take a minute and talk about wiring. In the past, when we did what was called a switch leg, the power would go to a junction box, and you would bring a piece of Romax wire down like this, and there's three screws on a switch. Two of them are your power in and power out, and the third one is simply your ground. Well, the electrician wired everything up using this 14 gauge 3 conductor wire, and he said that was a new code that our county inspectors had adopted. And so I'm no genius, but I said, well, there's only 3 screws and you got 4 wires on a switch. So what do you do with the extra wire? Well, let me show you what you do with the extra wire. This is the new code requirement, and this is one of the switches that he installed. You have your red and your black and your ground hooked up. Oh, but looky there in the back, what do you got? You got your white with a wire nut on it. Now, that white wire or what we would commonly call a return wire, is connected to the other returns up in junction box land, where all this comes together in the attic. And this new requirement, strangely enough, strangely enough, you might tell I'm not real big on Big Brother helping us out with all of our problems. The point of having the 3 wires in the box is so that in the future, if somebody wants to put a Bluetooth activated switch in there, it'll work. They'll have the 3 wires they need there. You know, my argument is I own this place. I'm going to retire and live here. Why can't I decide what I want in there? You know, it cost me $600 extra to for all the everything it took to do this with 3 wires instead of just doing a normal 2-wire switch leg. To me, since it's not a safety issue, I don't think that as the homeowner, I should be forced to wire my switch boxes for what somebody may or may not want in the future. So I don't know, just my little rant on I wish that the government wasn't so much in our business. I'm absolutely want everything safe, but that just seems ridiculous to me. It has nothing to do with safety. And another thing that you may not know, my power's coming in with it was coming in with 12-3 wire from the fuse panel over to a junction box, and then the 2 power wires were split out to run a couple extra circuits in the kitchen so that we would have 3 20-amp circuits in the kitchen. Well, under the new code, that's not allowed either, even though people have been doing it in houses for ever since they started wiring houses, I'm assuming, or since we started using Romax. Now you have to have a return for every power wire if your county or locality is following this new updated code, if they adopt that code. So you end up with an extra wire that hadn't been needed for who knows how long, but it is needed now. And another thing with the GFIs, the kitchen is all protected with GFIs, but and this is completely my fault, not the electricians. I tried to lay out some wiring just to speed the process up. The 2 guys that were supposed to do the electrical work kept putting me off, and I was just stringing some wire, trying to speed the process along. And when I finally got a hold of the electrician that I eventually used, super knowledgeable guy, really knew his stuff, and some of the stuff I had laid out wasn't going to work. If you run your wire from your fuse panel, it has to go directly to the GFI, and then directly from that GFI to the other outlets. The current code will not let you run the wire through a junction box, which to me is another thing that's just ridiculous. But So the end result of that might be, when we're all said and done, that I've got to spend huge money on GFI breakers, arc fault breakers, and maybe even combination GFI arc fault breakers. Electrician, of course, that's his deal, and he'll figure it all out, and I'll just pay for it. So a little education on electrical there. Sorry I've gone on so long. Let's make it a wrap.